Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 332. Today, Amanda talks all things marquetry with marquetry artist and box maker extraordinaire Albert A. Kleine and marquetry artist Chelsea Van Voorhis, who is gracing the cover of issue 315, sitting right next to me on my desk right now. It's an interesting conversation as two marquetry artists who come at it from two different angles with two totally different techniques. And they cover a lot of ground in this conversation. It's a fun one. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone, findwoodworking.com/unlimited. Head on over, sign up for an unlimited membership. It's, for the most part, the price of most Patreons these days of like a YouTube channel, but instead you get a subscription of Fine Woodworking magazine and 70 plus long form video workshops and an archive, access to the archive that is, we're getting really, really close, folks. About 50 years in the making. It is as much woodworking content as you can possibly stomach. Maybe that should be our new tagline. Huh. Let me call Sarah in marketing. All right, on with the show.
Happy New Year. It is good to get to chat with both of you kicking this year off. This is a really cool themed podcast we've been talking about for a while. Ben and I, it was a marquetry one, and I can't think of two better people to talk about their marquetry approach. So it's going to kind of be touching on that and just introducing two new people to the podcast. So Chelsea, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
I'm Chelsea Van Voorhis. I'm a woodworker. I specifically work in marquetry pretty much exclusively, and I've been doing that since 2018, 2019.
Love that. And so your background before that, well, you're in the latest issue of Fine Woodworking, which is really exciting on the cover.
Yes.
And so this was very appropriate timing for your marquetry technique. But before that, you were doing design,
fashion
right?
design.
Yeah, fashion design.
Yeah, I designed clothes for 6 years, Macy's private label brands. And it's actually really similar to woodworking. Like you take a material and you cut it up and then you put it back together.
I love that. Yeah. And Albert, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm a woodworker too, a hobbyist, not professional, but it's kind of getting a little bit out of control. I do a lot of marquetry work, which I guess is why I'm here today. But I do I try to do everything in woodworking, and I kind of go through phases with what I get interested in. I just finished up a book on box making because I was really into box making for a little while. And now I've been getting into marquetry, and I do a completely different type of marquetry than what Chelsea does. So like, I'm really happy that I'm able to see her work and talk with her. I'm really happy to be here because of that. But yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I do a lot of teaching on the side. I've been getting into teaching pretty much anything that anybody asks me to teach. I teach locally here outside of Baltimore at the Chesapeake Arts Center. I also teach for a nonprofit called Plain Wellness virtually. Going to be teaching more in person, lots of marquetry, hand tool stuff, everything I can do. So
awesome. Yeah, and you just recently, it was a couple of months back, did a blog on 3D marquetry, which I thought was really awesome.
That's right.
And a lot of people liked, and I've never seen that approach before. So
yeah, I had seen it, when we first met back in April, I believe it was, in Connecticut at I forget what it was called, Fine Woodworking Open House.
New England. Yeah.
Fine Woodworking New England. And Tim Coleman was there. And I ended up talking to him for a little while because I had been thinking about what Amanda's referring to is this approach where I do basically marquetry, double bevel marquetry, but alter the thickness of one of the veneers to create kind of different an image that has different planes effectively. And while I was at this event, I was talking to Tim Coleman and he was showing off some of his work and I saw some of it. And I ended up talking to him about it for a while and was like, well, how did you go about that? And he ended up talking to me about it. And it kind of gave me the permission to like go home and do it myself. Because it's like, well, if Tim Coleman's doing it, then I guess it's okay for me to like try. Yeah, and then ended up talking to you, and we were able to get that up, and it's really, really cool. So I've been like sneaking that into things here and there, just because it's a
How
nice.
do I find this blog? That's so cool.
Ask Amanda; she would know.
Can you send it to me after this?
Absolutely, yeah. We'll be putting all of
That
this
sounds
up
awesome.
in the notes too. Yeah, and it's I love that both of you do like completely different approaches to marketry. Like you said, Albert, and it's like a great way to like mix this up, make it approachable for people. I feel like marketry is one of those things that I've been super intimidated by. And then I shot Chelsea's article and I was like, you got in this flow state. And I'm like, oh my God, like I don't, what is happening? It was amazing to see. And then Albert, you post a lot on social and you just make it look so like effortless. Both of you do that. It's like a really, it like, I walked away from that being like, okay, I feel comfortable trying this now. So
I feel like everyone should try it. It's really not that difficult. And it's so much fun. There's like this weird intimidation layer that people feel around it. Maybe because it's like delicate, but don't. Just try it.
Completely agree. I mean, I think one of the things that's so cool about it is that because there's so many different ways of going about it, there's like, no matter what your situation is, you can get into it in some way. Like if, let's say, like my situation is I do a lot of hand tool work because I don't have a very big shop. I don't have really space for a scroll saw. I want to use a saw, but I can use a saw in my house, a fret saw, a hand saw. But if you can't do that because let's say you live in an apartment, you have roommates and things like that, well, then you can do knife veneer and it doesn't make any sound really. You don't really need a huge kit. And like what I totally agree with you, Chelsea, with saying that the intimidation factor. And what I see with people who I teach or I'll talk them through the process, and the second that they fit that first piece or like get like one thing together, it like all clicks that like, oh, like, yeah, this is like actually really cool and like no, not all that hard. Um, and so like it kind of demystifies it, and then after that, I feel like it's pretty easy to like kind of delve into it. I don't know if that's the same is true with how you do your work.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's how I started. Was I didn't have a shop, and I was just at home, and I had a strict no sawdust rule in the house. So I just had a knife and a little cutting mat, and I would be like on my living room floor on my coffee table, like with movies in the background, just playing around.
love that. Yeah. And it's like I did take a marquetry class and I learned pack marquetry on a scroll saw. And that's a completely different approach. So I just love that there's that many different ways of doing it. It's accessible. Like you can start with a small amount of tooling. And yeah, there's just a bunch of different approaches. Like you don't have to limit yourself to, it's one of those unique things in woodworking that you can approach multiple different ways. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, I really love that too, because like when people start a new hobby, it's so expensive. You don't know if you like it yet. So that was also for me, like bare minimum marquetry. The most expensive thing was a clamp. You could get like an $8 knife, a chunk of plywood, get a sample pack, and you could try it out and see. And if you hate it, then you're only out like $40, as opposed to going and buying like a table saw and then realizing you hate woodworking.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great, and it's I think the intimidating element tends to be like the design element of it. And you two both have very different design languages, which I really love too. And we'll dive into that in a little bit, but because I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But so we're starting off. This is the first podcast of the new year, and Ben and I were chatting about going back to old rituals that we used to do on the podcast, which is we talk about our all-time favorite tools and a smooth move, which is if you're a new listener to the podcast, is like your latest little fun moment in the shop, which I know we all have. But I wanted to start with all-time favorite tools because I feel like you two would have a unique perspective on that. Chelsea, what is your all-time favorite tool?
I like the cat cameo.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's a thing.
I'll give a 1 and 2. Obviously, my knife. It's just an Olfa knife. The blades break off. It's like $8 on Amazon, and then you can get the replacement blades. And then my second favorite tool is I bought. It's actually like a metalworking clamp, and it has like a really deep throat. And I bought 2 of them. They were like $50, and I love it. It's perfect. It helps me out with everything.
It's from where?
It's just from Lowe's. It's just a clamp,
Really?
but it's
Like a metal?
like a metal working one. It's not like for woodworking.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I was looking at like Bessie, the really deep reach Bessies today, because I'm so sick and tired of setting up like calls over and I just really want like maybe like 2. Yeah, like 2 would really change my life, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you mean.
Oh, nice.
But Albert, what's your favorite?
Yeah, can I do a cop out on the tool thing? Or do you want like a real answer? Because I can give you a cop-out answer, I can give you a real answer.
Give us both.
Okay.
So the cop-out answer is my hands. And what I mean by that is because recently I resolved in the last year that I was going to get good at sharpening my tools freehand, and like chisels, plane blades, things like that. And I had been so hesitant to do it for such a long time because for whatever reason, it had gotten into my head that like, plane blades are expensive and chisels are expensive, and like, oh, you don't want to mess up the edge by, sharpening improperly or rolling it over on a stone. So I would use a honing guide and all that stuff. And then one day it was just like, it occurred to me that no, it really doesn't matter. If you mess up the edge, you can always fix it. And I resolved to learn how to hand sharpen in 2024, and I have, and it has changed everything for me, like completely. I got rid of water stones. I got on diamond stones. I'm like zooming. So I am always sharp. That's my cop-out answer. My good answer is I just bought this. It's sharpening related, but I posted about this recently, but it's a strop from Zenwu Toolworks, which is, it's leather on one side, like raw leather. And on the other side, it's leather that's been impregnated with honing compound. And it's on a steel plate. And according to them, you never have to charge it with honing compound. So I've been using that, like combined with my hand sharpening. I keep my strop near me all the time, and I'm just like sharp all the time. And 2025 is the year of being sharp always. Is what that's and I set myself up for success with those 2 tools, I think. One of them being a real tool and one of them not being a tool. But getting rid of a tool. It was getting rid of the honing guide.
The honing guide
is the tool.
I like the take on that. I was at Texas Woodworking Festival back in November, and Zenwu was there, and he has this like new sharpening system I'm super excited about, because it's lapping stones, but they're thin. They're on almost a diamond plate. So they're magnetic. They drop into this flat plate, and it's like all under $100 for all the grits.
Really?
Because they're so thin, I guess he can get by with.
Huh.
Yeah.
I've been impressed. I mean, like I bought that strop, and it's like,
that's cool.
I don't know if you've gotten anything from them, but it's like everything comes packaged like.
It's elegant. Yeah.
Like what is this?
Full disclosure, I've got a couple things sent over, but it's like luxurious. Like,
very luxurious. It's a strop. I'm gonna make it dirty immediately. But nice
But
stuff.
I thought that was really cool too, like at that price point to have all the sharpening stones you need. And because it's on a magnetic base, it's like it cut the costs basically.
I mean, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting thing. I'd love to try that out. But okay, good answers. I just got a just a basic because I've been doing all this brass work. Albert will know he just bought a dovetail marker. I've been doing brass work, and I invested in, and it wasn't a huge investment, but just a belt grinder, like disc grinder, which I didn't have before, the benchtop one. I was like grinding it down, filing, and like sanding brass forever.
But just by hand?
hand, and then like I used files, and
Yeah.
I would like machine it, and it's rough, of course. And oh my god, it was a game changer when it came to these. So just a simple benchtop disc grinder.
I
Yeah,
completely. I teach classes at a makerspace, and I was recently teaching a class on making boxes. It's this very simple box, and we got to this point where it was like I was gonna break out all these hand planes and like teach them. These are beginners. It's like, okay, we'll break out of hand planes. I brought all these planes in from home. It's like we'll plane the sides and we'll do all that. And then I looked over and they had one of those disc sanders, which I don't have and I've never used. And I was like, I think we're gonna use that instead. And just like I'm not used to that kind of thing, but that was pretty magical to be like, okay, this is a lot easier for
I've strayed from that.
Wonderful.
Like
yeah,
it
me
seems
too. I shouldn't do that. But,
no, this isn't right. And he even had like a little miter gauge for the disc grinder, and I could get the angles like perfect. And I was like, what have I been doing? Like, sitting there. Yeah.
I completely understand.
I don't underestimate those cheap.
No.
Yeah. Benchtop tool. It's been great. So smooth move is the other one that we have. We all do, right? If
of course we do.
Yeah, I have like a million. That's like every day of my
Albert
life.
Go first.
Yeah, so I have one that is only recently started to become revealed to me, which is like a series of smooth moves, and it's due to I wouldn't say laziness, but laziness to a certain degree, which I posted a few times. I'm not very if I don't have, let's say I'm doing a Marquetry panel and it's not up to what I think is working out, or let's say I adhere to a substrate and I have issues when adhering it to a substrate. Chelsea, I'm sure you know about that. I have been not very hesitant in the past to just junk it and say, I guess I got to do that over. I have plenty of videos of me burning like panels that I've put
I've seen them,
20, 30 hours into, because it's like, well, the veneer or the field veneer bubbled up during glue up, and there's a crack in it and I can't deal with it. And I feel like Ben is going to love this. I was doing some reading recently in this. It's a fine woodworking book compiled from a very long time ago, but there is an article in here called Marquetry on Furniture from Fine Woodworking 38 by Silas Kopp. And it's about how to troubleshoot issues like that. So when you have, let's say, you adhere your Marquetry panel to a substrate and something happens during that whole process that causes the veneer to bubble up, and you take it out and you go, oh no, I have this big bubble up in the middle. How do I deal with this? This article goes through a whole bunch of different techniques to deal with that and handle it. And since reading this, I've had multiple times where in double bevel marquetry, it's much more common for this to happen. I can't speak to other methods, but sometimes you'll have a piece that fits a little too tight and you don't feel like recutting it, so you kind of coax it in there. And what that can do is it can crack your field veneer that you're fitting that piece into. And in the past, I would have said, oh, time to start over. But there's some pretty easy methods of fixing that, and I've started to fix that. I have a couple panels that I've done where there are these repairs that I've done where nobody knows about them except for everybody who I tell about them, and then point it out. But it's pretty easy to plan and fix those things. So I have like many smooth moves, which I guess cumulatively represent like hundreds of hours of work that I've thrown in fire pits that I probably could have saved. So beat that.
So it's a competition.
Right.
Love it.
So what is the solution for the field veneer? Like, is it
so most of it, and it's in this article, and I hope
I'm taking notes.
These photos are available on any type of online version, but it's effectively, getting in there and following certain grain lines up to certain termination points in your image. And that sounds really confusing. That's very hard to explain, and especially in an audio. But, in Marquetry, let's say you have an image of a flower in a walnut background, right? And you crack that walnut background. Well, what you can do is take a portion of that walnut background all the way to the edge, up to where it meets the flower, and take that and kind of route that portion out of your veneer panel, and then splice in a section in there. And because it terminates cross grain at where your image is, you don't get that icky, cross grain glue line. Like, you take advantage of the Marquetry pattern itself to where you splice in the fix. So you don't see those termination points. So you're really only your glue lines are only along the grain in that field, which are much easier to hide, right?
Right.
So it's pretty cool. It's a great article, and it is very helpful. Like, there are definitely things that I've posted where there was one that I did. It's in a white oak field with a bunch of maple leaves on it, and it's like spalted maple end grain maple leaves. And in that, one of those maple leaves was a little too tight, and I put it in there, and the white oak field cracked at the top. And I just took some white oak, and luckily it was rift sawn, so it's pretty easy to match that. It's very straight grained. I just took that little portion out to where it met the top of one of those maple leaves and slipped it in, and you can't tell. The person I gave it to can tell because I told him about it, but if you walked along, you wouldn't be able to tell. And the thing about it is that reading the article, it's very there are other tips on like how to do it. Especially taking into account that veneers usually have a good side and a bad side if they're knife cut. And so, you want to make sure that you're using the correct side, and there's lots of considerations. But anyway, I guess my point is that I should do more research before I light things on fire.
I love that.
I love
Chelsea.
that, but I still like an on fire video.
I mean, it's
very
fun.
dramatic.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It feels
We all
It's
have
for the internet.
It's free.
Content.
Yeah.
It's free. I mean, honestly, sometimes some of those are the result of me just saying, you get to the point where you keep trying to fix something over and over, and you're just chasing your tail, and you just say, you know what? Let's remove the option of fixing this.
Yeah, I've had a furniture project or two like that.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yep. Cut your losses and move on.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I had a bag glue up once. I didn't have the framing mat underneath it, so it was all bubbly. I was like, okay, well, I could save this. I could spend, 30 hours on it. And I was like, whatever, I'll throw it out. And I did a stupid little Instagram video. And I had people reach out saying, no, I want it. And I was like, I'm not going to fix it. You can have it. It's garbage. Pay for shipping and you can have it. But I'm not fixing it. And they were like so happy about it. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
That's funny. But it is one of those things where I don't think people see the the same things we do as the person making it.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
They never do. I mean, they never do. They won't. I mean,
unless you point them out.
Go. Yeah. Well, which everyone does, of course. But
yeah.
I mean, but you don't get better unless you get a little obsessive.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's
true.
The way it is.
Like one of my first experiences with veneer glue ups, I'll reference this, and I wasn't going to. I haven't been in the shop lately because I did a real life smooth move and rolled my ankle on Christmas Eve. So
nice.
But
nice.
This is kind of connects to this podcast because my first experience with veneer was this large chessboard I was doing with commercial veneer, and I bought Unibond 1. And I had my vacuum bag. I bought Aurora Kit vacuum bag, the pump one.
Oh yeah,
affordable.
That's what I use.
Yeah, those are great actually when you do the process right.
Yeah, yeah, you got to do that.
Yeah, I had done parquetry, so I had cut out. It was a 3x3 foot chessboard. I had cut out all this. I had silver koa and maple veneer because they wanted contrast, and spent probably good say 30 hours cutting parquetry, learning how to do that, like get it dialed and seamed up, everything. And just the immediately swelled up. It was like there's no saving it, nothing.
Yeah.
I have a photo of it somewhere. But it turned me into I did shops on veneer after that, and I did the maple alternating, which Albert knows.
Yeah,
that's where that came from.
Big time. I'm glad you messed up then.
Yeah,
I've stolen. Amanda posted this like this. It's just maple veneers, right? And they're just rotated 90 degrees, and that like subtle difference. Like, I don't know, it stuck with me when you posted that years and years ago.
Yeah, and it was because of a mistake and like having limited material.
I love it. I love it because I've stolen that so many times. I love that
thing. But it's like I just thought of it when you were talking about it too. I was like, oh yeah, like gluing up veneer is the most complicated, stressful thing. Like even
unless it's shop zone.
Yeah, shop zone helps, but commercial veneer stresses me out.
Oh
still.
yeah,
I still get stressed. Yeah, every time.
Yeah, you work. That's all you work with, right, Chelsea?
Yeah, pretty much.
I can't. It's so scary to me. It's like it's just
like
terrifying.
Walking the line of danger.
Yeah, well, because you are the thing about it that terrifies me is that and I've tried doing commercial veneers and double bevel marquetry, which is, I'm doing all saw cuts. Saw cuts and commercial veneers do not go well together unless you are being really, really, really careful.
Yeah.
And the thing that it just frustrated me too much, especially going from working with shops on veneers. And like, I don't know, you're able to get quite a lot of detail with commercial veneers, at least from more than I could. And so.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how I would do it with a saw. It would just explode. Yeah.
I mean, people do it for sure. I have no interest in that.
Yes. Very talented people can do that.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Correct.
I was going to say too, though, like what it kind of tied you two together in my mind was also just highlighting how to fix mistakes, which was a big part of Chelsea's article. It's like, no pressure. Like, you can fix this by doing the similar technique you're talking about, with grain running the same direction, just thinking about things, how they look visually, they'll disappear. And it's like, I really loved that element of it because it like lessens the pressure of it. And also, every like good woodworker I know, it's like the biggest thing they know is how to fix mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really important part of it. Like, it's
what
gonna
is
happen.
What is that like magician con man term where you avert someone's attention on purpose? What is that term? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Like, yeah, you purposefully make them look this way away from your mistake. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a word. For sure.
For marquetry scam artists.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I might have the title of the podcast now.
No. Yes.
No, but I love that. Like, I really I loved that Chelsea's approach was like, you can push this piece back in, it's gonna look seamless, and it does. Like, it happened as it was going. I was like seeing it real time, and it's like, oh yeah, that's no big deal. Like, you don't have to get so precious with it, that everything can be fixed if you know how.
And I repeatedly said this in a class I just taught maybe 2-3 weeks ago, but it's when you're teaching woodworkers, or if you're a woodworker and you're going into marquetry, you have to get out of the headspace of like the normal rules of woodworking. Like, because like the normal rules of woodworking where, things really do matter. Like, if you don't know what you're doing and you, let's say, are a beginner woodworker and you pick up a fine woodworking article that has plans in it and you're going to follow them to a T without understanding why certain things are done. Like, let's say why this joint is being used or why this particular board is oriented this way, right? And there are reasons for that, right? Or why plywood would be used here versus solid wood, things like that. But in marquetry, there's no rules. So it's kind of like, get out of the headspace of like this, like, I had people being like, oh, can you do that? It's like, yeah, I mean, if you could do it, you could do it. Like, I don't know, can you? Like, just go right ahead. It doesn't like, and once I realized that, it was like super freeing, because I remember years ago, I did this whole panel of a whole bunch of birds, And in double bevel marquetry, right, you're cutting out each individual piece. And it gets to the point where I need to do the pupil of one of these birds. And like the scale of this thing is just to the point where it's like, I got to cut out this tiny little circle that's maybe like diameter, I don't know, let's say 1/32 of an inch if I'm being generous. And it's like, first off, how do I cut that out? And secondly, how do I not lose that piece after I cut it out? And I ended up doing it and getting it done. And it was nerve-wracking and it was horrible. And then I remember later picking up a book by Craig Stevens, who I learned marquetry from. He teaches out of Philadelphia. And he's doing a bird in this book, and he's just like, oh yeah, to do the eye, I just take a drill bit and drill a hole in there, and then just like kind of sharpen a piece of veneer into a point, and then I just jam it in there and plane it off. And it's like, oh yeah, like it's a pupil, right? It doesn't matter, right? It's going to be black, right? So even if it's end grain, it's a little darker. Like who cares? It's a pupil, right? So this is like one of the few things you can do anything. You can like it, for example, recently I had to do a portrait of someone, and there was the person I was doing the portrait of has a gray beard. And I was like, well, I don't have any gray shop sawn veneers, but I had some, I think it was ammonia fumed, like white oak commercial veneer. So I just took it and I laminated onto a piece of like shop sawn maple veneer and said, okay, this is now shop sawn, fumed oak veneer. And it worked. And it's just like, yeah, okay, that's fine. I can do that. Because it's just a picture, right?
I think that's kind of where I flip-flop between being a woodworker and being an artist. I kind of I call myself both, really. Because like, to your point, like I can't make a chair. If I make it wrong and you sit in it, fall over. Like if I'm making a portrait, I can break all of the rules. It doesn't have to be square. I can trick your mind into seeing what I want you to see. And it's fun, especially teaching new people and beginners marquetry, because I've taught people from 10 up to 70. And I'll be like, okay, this is how I do it. And then they'll go off and do their own thing for a little bit. And then they'll come back and be like, what about this? And I'm like, I've never seen that before. I've never thought of that. That's so cool. Like, I just love it.
Yeah, it's great.
We have no rules.
No rules. It's better. And the fewer rules you have, the better your work is. I mean, like, the second I stopped caring about rules, like work got so much better.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Much better.
And I think marquetry is honestly easier to get into because you can make a little tiny panel in like a day. Okay. If you're starting into woodworking and you're trying to make like a chair or a table or something, that could be like months of time and an investment. Marquetry, you could just do it really quick. If it turns out and you like it, keep doing it. If it doesn't turn out or you hate the whole process, then you only really wasted a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
I found, I think my packet marquetry class was 1.5 days. And it was like, I left with a panel of something. It felt very rewarding. But I do love that. We're going to take a quick little break. And then we have like a ton of questions for you guys.
Yes Tomorrow's Woodworking Certificate program is a fantastic way to immerse yourself in the craft of furniture making while surrounded by the beautiful landscape of central Vermont. Whether you're a novice looking to start your journey or an intermediate woodworker seeking to refine your skills, the 12-week program is a comprehensive learning experience that will help you meet your goals. If you're interested in learning more, you can visit yestermorrow.org for details and to apply. It's a perfect chance to deepen your craft and gain the experience needed to launch your own woodworking business or career.
We should definitely dive into some questions because we had quite a few. And some of these are specific to either of you because it has to do with technique. But I'm going to start with like a neutral one because we kind of just talked about this anyway. So this question is from Bevel Up on Discord, and he asks, how did they learn about the variety and color of woods available to use? Are there any references they recommend? And adding to that, how do you design around woods that lose color over time or get darker or lighter? I thought that was a good question because you're already talking about like, yeah, you're using what's available kind of, but do you factor that in when doing the work, or is that just, is it immediate payoff?
You want to go first?
Yeah, so I saw this question and immediately thought the second part. So the second part of the question asking, how do you factor in woods that change color over time? The answer to that is think about it a lot, because downstairs I have this piece that I worked on. It was one of the first pieces I worked on. It was very complicated. It was like a very long time. I was super proud of it when I did it. And it has cherry blossoms all over it. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be smart and use cherry for the cherry blossom petals. And it looked great when I made it. And now it's like a dark mess all over the place. And it's just lost so much definition. I did a lot of sand shading on these petals. And that cherry just, because it's in this sunny room over the past 2 years, it's just darkened and lost all the definition. So, with something like cherry, like I won't use cherry at all, pretty much, unless I am okay with both colors it's going to be, like on the lighter end and the darker end, or if it's already been kind of darkened, it's a little bit of an older veneer. So yeah, that's really, cherry to me is like the only real like ticking time bomb that's really going to change. I mean, there's all those, exotic woods like, Purple Heart, which is, notorious for turning brown, and like, all those exotic ones that are like these bright, vibrant colors when you first plane them, and then they just turn into like muddy brown. But I don't really use those. So, and part of that is because, which goes back to the beginning of the question, the availability of veneers, colors, and things like that. Chelsea has probably a much better color palette available to her because of the use of commercial veneers, and because I'm using primarily shop sawn veneers. And if I do buy, veneers, they're always 1/16 of an inch thick. I don't like buying 1/16 of an inch veneers because you're usually knife cut, and those can have knife checks in them, which can cause problems later. And I've had that problem with knife checks and veneer. It's not fun. But in terms of availability, the thing that's nice about shop sawn veneer is if you're cutting it yourself and you have the ability to cut it yourself, whatever you can buy solid lumber in, you can turn it into shop sawn veneer. If you need colors, there are suppliers who do dyed like thick 1/16 of an inch thick veneers, which is what I'm using. Raw Rocket, which you mentioned earlier, which is a skateboard company, they make veneer bags, but they also will sell you dyed sheets of, I believe it's all maple. Yeah, it's all sugar maple veneers that are dyed different colors, and they have like a crazy color palette. And you can they sell boxes of like veneer, like cutoffs, I guess you'd call them, like just pieces of odd veneers, and they'll sell you, I forget, it's like however many pounds for a certain amount of money, which is like perfect for marquetry because you just get these little tiny pieces, and that's all you really need for marquetry. But it can be challenging with the shop sawn stuff because, you don't have like commercial veneers. The best thing about them is that you can buy a marquetry pack of veneers for like $30 and get like, gosh, I don't know. I bought one of them one time and there's just everything in the world. So
huge, yeah. Yeah, I would say that what you're saying with the dyed veneer, that's probably the trickiest, because if you have a marquetry panel with all these different veneers that are natural wood, they're going to fade at the same time. So darker is going to get lighter, lighter is going to get darker, and it's going to kind of look even. But if you have like all natural colors and then just a couple of dyed pieces, over time, the dyed pieces are going to stay kind of bright. So that's something that I would think about. And then I would also say, whenever I sell a piece, I always tell someone, don't hang it in direct sunlight.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that dyed versus natural thing, Chelsea. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. When you look at really old marquetry pieces, there's not a lot of contrast because of the natural wood tones. They all kind of, you're right.
Yeah.
They all kind of neutralize. But I hadn't
Yeah,
thought
I've
of that.
done a couple
I'm
pieces.
writing that down.
Yeah,
It's-
I've done a couple pieces with like a little piece of like dyed green poplar, and then after a couple years, all you see is these little pieces of green poplar.
yeah.
And it's like if you're gonna go hard with the color, go hard.
Yeah.
But if you're not, then
Or, plan for it, right? Like,
yeah.
oh, okay, I want this, this, because I could think of, let's say if you're doing like, I don't know, my mind automatically goes to like a ghostly figure or something like that with like bright red eyes and like that fading over time, but like the bright red eyes staying there could be kind of a cool thing. I don't know. I'm just talking. But
Oh my God, and then put a light behind it so the light glows from behind the eye.
dude, I've got some there's another article, if I can. There's another article in this this great book. It's called Marquetry and Veneer, Fine Woodworking on Marquetry and Veneer. It's called Pentimento Marquetry. And I'll send this to you, Chelsea, because it's like the coolest thing I've ever seen. It's I forget who is I'd have to go through it. I'll send this to you, Amanda. But it's doing marquetry and then adhering another sheet of veneer on top of it and then sanding it away until it like you just see the pattern through. And the person who does it says they do it primarily with holly veneers. So it's like this like white and like you could like I could just see, like it could look like fog over like figures and stuff. Sorry, I'm going.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to make time to get into both of your design processes too.
Sorry.
Oh no, don't worry. I love this. This is like exactly why we wanted you two on this podcast together. So perfect. I love that answer. So I'm going to jump into the double bevel marquetry questions first. And this is from Jason. He says, I have a handle on the basics of double bevel marquetry, and I'm having a hard time finding resources for more advanced information. Even most classes that I travel for are titled Introduction to Double Bevel Marquetry or similar. Most books on marquetry seem to have double bevel as an afterthought or not even mentioned. Maybe I'm just bad at looking, but I'd love the thoughts on folks who know more than me. Which is, you already have books out, Albert.
So. I do have, well, okay. So my answer to this is multi-part. First, this book has been really, truly, it's called Fine Woodworking on Marquetry and Veneer. I'm sure it's out of print, but it was printed by Taunton in 1987. But it's a collection of articles and they're all, I'm sure, available to Fine Woodworking subscribers or whatever. And it's kind of a hodgepodge of things. There's no real, at least in my experience of looking for materials to read, you're kind of not going to get everything from one individual person. So the way I've been approaching it is I will just read like any article on double bevel marquetry because every single person has a slightly different approach. I'm telling you, it's like, it's wild. Like at that Fine Woodworking New England thing, I watched Frank Straza do marquetry, and I had done marquetry for years, and he'd done it for years, and we do it mostly the same, but he did one thing very slightly differently that has saved me hours. And that kind of demonstrated to me that I should be looking at how as many people as possible do it. So I do think that there's value, even if it's intro to double bevel marquetry articles by all these different people. Read every single one of them because you'll get these small tips there. This book that I keep referencing has a bunch more of those more experimental things, that like pentimento thing that I mentioned with the, a layering of veneer on top. There's a discussion of that. There's that Silas Kopp article in there about patching in veneers and dealing with mistakes and things like that. So there's a lot of information out there. You just kind of gotta be willing to take a kind of studious mindset with it. The other thing is talk to people and like get involved with people that are doing it, because there's so many people doing marquetry right now, and the one commonality among all of us is that we all love talking about it and showing you how we do things. At least that's my experience with it. And you're going to learn a lot just from what people are doing, because again, it's such an experimental and such a like the rules go out the window. So like I've been doing things that like I don't know if other people are doing. Probably someone's done it in the past because like, you know, there's billions of human beings on the planet and they've been around for a long
original.
time.
Yeah.
Nothing's original, but you know, I haven't seen it, you know, but it's just because I'm messing around, and there are lots of people messing around. So check that out. The other thing is that I'm trying to, in the process of looking these things myself, compile them, and we'll be like trying to put together something as like a resource of like all these different types of, you know, styles of marquetry and like bits and pieces. So hopefully at some point before I die, I'll have like everything I've learned available for people to just read and like, you know, freely available type thing. But in the meantime, just do digging or just ask people. Like you can ask me. I answer like every DM. So, you know, just ask me. Or Chelsea. I'm sure she'll answer.
I won't answer questions about double bevel. That hurts
not double bevel.
No, but I will say the same thing as you though. I feel like marquetry is getting a little bit bigger, at least in my mind, and my network is getting larger, and everyone I know is so helpful and so kind, and there's no like competition, and everyone just wants to share knowledge, which is like my favorite thing. Like we should not be gatekeeping knowledge or charging for it. And I love that like people like you are out here just sharing.
Well, I mean, and that's because it's such a collaborative exercise is why that, I mean, because it's not about, I mean, the gatekeeping is not so much like, well, you know, creating competition so that one person gets better than the other, but it's also like, it's good to see other people's work because it's going to make your work better. Because like I guarantee there are things in like the cover story of Fine Woodworking this month that I am going to steal and put into my own work, even though it's not double bevel marquetry, right? Yeah. Because I will need it at some point, right? So yeah, marquetry's great. It's a feel good, happy crew, I think. At least the people I know. So, you know, take advantage of those resources.
And chock full of weirdos too.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Full of weirdos with our
I mean, we're pretty up there, I think.
Woodworkers in general already set the baseline, and then it just goes from there. I love it. I'm gonna divert from the double bevel because we are condensing so much into this episode, and I'm like, now it needs to almost be 2 or continuation. But I'll jump into another one. So Chelsea, you've been doing laser cut marquetry, which a lot of people asked us about in the Discord channel. And you do, I know because I've been started to pick your brain about this, is that you do a mix of hand cut and laser. So it's not entirely laser cut. I'd love to know how you kind of go about that. And Albert and I were talking about laser cut marquetry a few weeks ago, I feel like. Yeah.
So I don't own a laser cutter. I have one here at work. So I use that every once in a while. And the first time I did it, I started playing around and I just did, the whole thing was laser cut, you know, the positive and the negative motif. So I did get that huge kind of kerf line and I was like, whatever, this is fun. And I actually made a lot of pieces that were, you know, affordable at craft shows, which was nice. I was able to make multiple pieces, sell them for $50 as opposed to like 500. So that was nice knowing that like people actually got to own my work. And it was also just fun. I really liked doing computer work. You know, when I was in fashion design, I spent 8-10 hours a day on Illustrator, and I love that program. So I do like doing that aspect of it. I don't really use the laser cutter anymore unless it's super detailed. And what I like to do, so is I have like a positive and a negative motif. I pick whichever wood is harder to cut. So if something's like ringay or something, I'll plop that in the laser cutter, cut that shape out, and then put it on, you know, my nice soft Anna Gray background or something, and then cut around that with a knife so I don't have the kerf line. But
Nice. Okay.
I think it's really fun, but I still am loyal to the knife.
That's awesome. And I can see it being practical for certain reasons, right? Like, again, you're saying like you want your work. There's always this line of like, I want my work to be accessible for people. I love production runs for that reason. It's like, I don't, if I'm doing one off of something, it never makes sense. Yeah.
And I love to trade with other artists, and I can't afford like a $500 piece of art. So like you do a print, I'll do a laser cut, we'll trade, and then both of our houses look cooler.
I love that. And then, okay, so I wanted to designate a little bit of time for this because another reason I wanted both of you here is your design approaches are so different. Chelsea, you did like, and Albert, you talk about this a lot on social media too, like your approach to things. But Chelsea, you did like a video series as an extension of your article online, and you were talking about like, well, this, like, and I saw this when I was photographing the article of you just like getting in this flow state and, well, this would look good here, this would look good there. And like your approach feels like more organic, like in the moment. And then Albert, yours is like very like, I don't know if technical is the word. I kept saying that today. But I don't know if that's like the right word for it. But I'd love to hear like your approach to designing a panel, essentially.
So
yeah, you go.
Okay. Well, I've kind of changed it up recently. I used to be effectively the way I'd start a panel is kind of draw out whatever I want on a piece of tracing paper usually, and then transfer it onto what I would call the field veneer or the main veneer that I'm going to be working on. And then basically the whole process is fitting in pieces of insert veneers into voids that I'm cutting into that. And so I would trace my pattern on there and kind of just cut in kind of a methodical way. Okay, this piece is first because it's behind visually this piece, or, thinking of, like, say, a flower with 5 petals. If you're doing 5 petals, you pick the one in the background first, and then you cut the next piece after you've inserted the first one. So you're kind of doing a layering process. But anyway, it was all very methodical. Recently, I've changed it up because I've been trying to do much more work that looks much more like watercolors, if that makes sense, a little bit more painterly. And so with that, I'm working much more on the fly. So I am basically, the way I think about it now, and I'm not an artist, or at least a painter, I don't know how that stuff works. So if the terminology is wrong, excuse me. But if I'm doing, let's say, a portrait of someone, a face, it starts with blocking out colors and just saying, okay, I'm going to insert like this, the forehead is darker over here, so I'm going to do that. And then what I'll do is just kind of go back in with a pencil and kind of just draw on it and say, okay, well, that would look good there. And then go back in and insert veneer. So it has become a much more extemporaneous kind of practice for me, starting off with like blocking out colors. So it's much more of it feels much more like oil painting now, the way I do it. But I did start from, okay, there are 53 pieces in this, and I need to do it in this order: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way through. And this piece will be, maple. This piece will be cherry. This piece will be such and such. Moving away from that has made my work, like, I think, a lot better. So I kind of have moved away from, I think that's a great way to start. But now I'm more seeing things like shadows, and I feel like I'm seeing things much more the way like an actual artist would see things, instead of like a woodworker who just sees, blocks of wood. If that makes sense. So
yeah,
I don't know if that makes sense to you, Chelsea, because like you have much more of an artistic background than I do. So I would imagine
I was just going to say, your last 2 portraits that you posted are very different than things you've done in the past. And they're like very cool and just have like a lot more, I don't know, balance and life to them. They're really nice.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that does come from just being, really a lot of it, and this goes back to what we were discussing way earlier on, is being willing to, put in a piece. Like when you're doing a portrait, like bad portraits look bad, right? Like, like they look bad. So especially like the last portrait I did was of my father-in-law's father who passed away in 2024. You cannot give your father-in-law a bad portrait of his late father. You can't do that, right? So like it means you have to focus on features like noses, right? Like everyone has a nose that is distinct, right? Or most people do, and eyes. So it's like going in there, putting that piece in and being like, wow, nope, that does not look right. That looks completely wrong. That color is too dark, or the grain is oriented wrong, or, you know, oh boy, I messed up my cut there and like went in the wrong direction or whatever. And just being willing to say, well, now I got to do it again. And you always can in marquetry until it's on a substrate, and then it becomes a lot harder, but you still can even then. So anyway, I'm like totally hijacking you.
No. I was actually going to say, it's really funny that you were saying you were going from a really regimented to more of a now like freehand, because I've done just the opposite. I still do a lot of like freehand, very like organic kind of layer as I go. But my most recent piece is a wall hung cabinet, and there's like 4 different cubbies.
Ooh, yeah.
And they
I
have
love
4
this
different
thing.
timber doors. And the 4 doors and the 4 inside panels all match up. And of course, there's a gap because of the framing. So I had to make sure that each line like perfectly lined up. And I designed it all to scale on Illustrator and then printed it out. And I was sitting there cutting my lines, like you were saying, 1, 2, 3 in a row.
Yep.
So we just essentially flip-flopped with our techniques.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're, and everyone should look up what you're talking about.
Yes,
because
we'll put a photo up.
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
amazing.
because it really, I mean, it does line up. And for stuff like that, it's again, like getting back to like a bad portrait is a bad portrait. It is like really bad. If the piece that you worked on didn't line up, like that's garbage, right?
It was
like
my nightmare.
Right,
I had anxiety dreams about, because like the last step is putting in the doors, and I was like, if they don't match.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh my, yes. Technical feat. That's amazing.
I'm doing something similar now, Chelsea, with a box that I'm making where the top is a panel of marquetry, and then the sides, it's going to be a dovetail box, but like the sides I've actually resawed off a sheet of they're curly maple, but I resawed off a face and did the marquetry on that, and it's going to get glued right back on. And I'm just going to cut dovetails right in that solid wood, because it's not that wide, and it's, riffs on, so it's not going to move. But what I was going to say is that the piece, the panel on the top curves over to the sides. And so that took like a ton of planning to make sure that I haven't finished it yet, so I haven't executed it. So maybe I'll totally screw it up. But I know exactly what you mean. It's like I felt like the Charlie Day with of this from It's Always Sunny with anyway.
Yeah.
You go insane. Marking these things up.
So listeners, this is what you get to aspire to. This is just complete.
Yeah, exactly.
We went from it's so approachable to.
Well, that's the thing.
I love it though.
There's so many off ramps. There's so many off ramps though, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Absolutely.
You don't have to be like us.
Mm-hmm.
You can.
You should.
You should, but you don't have to.
I love it.
But it's also once, at least for me, once I've done some things and I've kind of mastered certain techniques or certain aesthetics or whatever, now I'm just kind of what can I make more complicated? Just take a timber door, but put marquetry on it. I just want to put marquetry on everything. And that's kind of how I'm challenging my insanity now.
Same. I mean, literally same. And everything's a marquetry panel. Everything I see is oh yeah, that would look great. Yeah. That would look great. Yep.
Amazing. I love it.
We should have a separate blog that's just can we put veneer on it? Can we veneer it?
Can we veneer?
Well, you can. In one of these books, it's all Silas Kopp okay, that article, he does marquetry on curved box lids. So can you put marquetry on a curved box lid? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. So, sorry, just another plug for the magazine. Look at me.
Thank you guys so much for doing this. We are running out of time very quickly. Again, I think it's just going to have to be another episode.
I
There's
will
way too
talk
much to talk about.
forever.
But I appreciate you having you both. Do you guys have any upcoming classes that are open for people to take, or anything you want to plug?
If you're in New Orleans, we've got Community Workshop NOLA classes, and we've got Dykes with Drills classes. Oh, actually, Dykes with Drills is a national organization. We have chapters in San Francisco, Chicago, New York City, New Orleans, and coming up in Boston and LA.
Perfect.
Not
Okay.
not Baltimore?
Not yet.
Come on.
You can start one.
We'll get
Woo's
there.
in Baltimore. You gotta hook up the Woo people.
Yeah.
Come on. I teach at Chesapeake Art Center in Brooklyn Park, Maryland. I think I have a bunch of classes coming up in the spring that are open. I'm going to have some more marquetry classes for Plain Wellness, which will be virtual. I'll have more classes and stuff. And then I have a book coming out in May on
Exciting.
box building, not marquetry. There is some marquetry in there, though. There is a one-piece marquetry panel, and I teach you how to do it. And the whole point of it is to be like, you don't have to get too crazy with it. If you just want to do like, it's the silhouette of a rose, and you can learn it very quickly. So
Perfect. Yeah, plug this all in the shop notes. Yeah, thank you guys so much. This was a really fun episode. A great way to kick off the new year.
yeah,
And we'll have to have you back.
thanks for
For
having
sure.
me.
Definitely. This is awesome.
Guys.
Well, that does it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Thank you so much to Chelsea and Albert and Amanda. And come on, try your hand at marquetry. I've done it, inspired by Chelsea's work especially, and I have been adding it to so much more of my work, and it's unbelievably easier than you think it is. So check it out. We'll have links in the show notes. Head on over to our Discord and continue on the conversation there. If you're on YouTube, click that thumbs up button. On iTunes or Spotify or whatever, a thumbs up, 5-star, positive comment, review, woo. Thank you. All right, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks for listening.